Yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
Little
OCD. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, he didn't see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live stream. As we kick off the 2023 year, we are so incredibly excited to have y'all here as we talk about what it means to kick off 2023 on the right foot with all things OCD and living into our values. So this live stream is, well, I guess before I'll get into all that, let's do just a fun question. So for folks who are listening tonight, anyone is welcome to comment here. Maybe something.
How about your favorite memory from 2023?
No, 2022.
No, 2023.
Oh, already?
Yeah.
Oh, our favorite memory so far. Okay. So if anyone has a favorite memory so far from 2023 that they want to add to the comments, you are more than welcome to add. And I will ask our guests here, if anyone, Ethan, why don't you start? What is your favorite memory from 2023?
My favorite memory from 2023 is discovering that we had $180 in Starbucks gift cards in the closet, and then actually remembering to bring them with us on our road trip down and using them.
It's a good memory.
Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. $180?
There were like 30 Starbucks gift cards in there from her entire teaching career that somehow disappeared into oblivion, and then I discovered them. She should feel ashamed.
Yeah, I kept putting them. So that's a whole different conversation. I think there was some, and that's a different conversation too. I feel like some of them had like nice little notes on them, and so anyway, that's yes. Yeah.
Please help. Locked in for 2017.
Anyway, does anyone else have anything from 2023? Callista, do you have a favorite 2023 memory so far?
Yeah, the first day of 2023, I went on a hike with my boyfriend and my dog, and it was super wholesome. But it was nice because we did the whole hike, and usually we like end it early. So we did the whole thing, and we started off 2023 right. So that was pretty fun.
I love that. That's like, I love the wholesome, just kind of hanging out and going hiking part.
Because the night before it wasn't as wholesome because it was New Year's Eve.
This is a kids. We'll talk offline.
Love that. And then Uma, do you have any 2023 highlights so far?
Being alive, waking up. No, but in reality, I guess, so on New Year's Day, we were celebrating a late Christmas with my husband's family because they had gotten COVID during actual Christmas. And so it was like the first time I'd see them on New Year's, I guess. And so it was kind of Christmas, kind of not. And they live on a lake and they have just like a huge yard with all the things. And randomly at the same time, a bunch of geese and ducks, and I didn't know the difference between them, but I didn't tell them that. They're both of them, and a bunch of deer like all came at the same time, and it was just kind of cool to hang out with them. And I didn't know. And they didn't kill me, so that I'm grateful.
Those are geese in Texas. Oof.
So my last memories in Texas before I get out of here.
Are you moving?
Wherever I end up, that's not here. Wait, PhD interviews.
Oh, that's a whole different conversation. Oh, if we have so much we can talk about. But I love these. I love what folks are adding in the chat. Yeah, we're doing 2023 memories, but 2022 is fine too. We still love the 2022 one, Eric and Brooke. I love the getting rid of an eating disorder behavior. I mean, that's just a huge step in the right direction. Just awesome. And I see Eric buying a new computer, Mike, mouse running across your car windshield. There are lots of things going on.
Was the car moving? Or because that would not be a good situation. Well, anyway, go on.
Yeah, I don't know. And then Valerie, the Niners beating the Raiders.
It's a Bay Area thing.
It is a Bay Area thing. Phyllis, favorite memory of 2022 is the day I walked out of work for the last time and retired.
Yay, Phyllis.
That's awesome. Way to go, Phyllis.
We have SpongeBob SquarePants here.
We do. We have, wait, I lost it. Where did that go? Oh, SpongeBob SquarePants.
It's a question. We'll get
to questions. But I do also see watching the new Avatar movie. Yeah, so these are awesome ways to kick off 2023. I think my highlight so far, as you all might notice, Ethan and I are in a different place than we usually are for the live streams. We are visiting my family at the beach right now. So if we have any Wi-Fi issues, please feel free to let us know and be super patient with us. But we are still really just excited to be here with y'all tonight. So I am going to dive into just some housekeeping. This live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please work with your provider or contact a local clinician. You can use the IOCDF's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find help to locate a trained clinician near you. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. If you are in crisis or if you're ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. You can also access online at www.988lifeline.org. And finally, we want to create as safe a space as possible and always be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're all here to support one another, but do want everyone to know that this is being broadcast on several social media platforms and is being recorded. So keep that in mind as you comment. But again, we want you to feel safe here. We want you to ask questions. We want you to support one another. This is all just about being here in community on this journey together. And I already see folks supporting, like Mike congratulating Uma on PhD interviews and all of those wonderful things. And that's what it's all about tonight, is just supporting one another as we kick off 2023 on the right foot. So on that note, do you want to help kick off 2023 on the right foot?
Sure. So such a youthful panel, Valerie says. Clearly talking about me.
Only she could see my gray hairs everywhere.
Oh my God, Uma.
So bad.
I don't see any.
Oh.
I don't see any either, Calista.
It's-
She is very young.
So
Okay.
as Katie said, thank you all. A bird pooped on my sister's head while we were in the forest. Good luck, apparently. I love that, Margaret. That's a great memory. So welcome everybody. Happy New Year for sure. We thought we'd talk with two of our newest IOCDF advocates, Callista Dwyer and Uma Chatterjee. Awesome, stellar advocates in their own right, been doing all kinds of exciting advocacy endeavors and efforts for many, many years, long before they have graced us with their presence. But we're so excited to have them on board the team. We want to get to know a little about them, as well as talk to them about ways that they manage, or they're considering managing their OCD and what they've got going on for the new year, and obviously answering any and all questions that you may have as well. So with that, and as always, please feel free to load the comment thread with questions. We'll be happy to answer. If you've already asked a question, we will get to it shortly. Hey, Chad, good to see you. And otherwise, so Callista, any plans? I'm just going to put you on the spot. Why not?
Okay.
So,
I'm here for it.
So how it's the new year's always challenging, because it's like, okay, new year, New Year's resolutions, or as Katie calls them, compassionate commitments. And, this year I'm going to try and do the, how do you like?
Oh, wait, can I say what a compassionate commitment is for anyone who needs that context? Okay, so a compassionate commitment, just for folks to know, not to step on Ethan's toes. In the support groups I lead, we don't do goals, we don't do resolutions, because I am not really in favor of just checking off a box or being really mean to yourself if you don't accomplish something. So we talk a lot about compassionate commitments, which means committing to do something that's in favor of your values and taking steps toward that, but giving yourself compassion if you don't do it perfectly. So for instance, if I'm going to compassionately commit to do something to not engage in a compulsion today, or to step towards my values in the midst of something that's really scary, if I don't do it perfectly, I'm going to say, all right, Katie, I have OCD. This is really hard. I'm going to give myself compassion, but I'm going to try to step towards that again tomorrow. So that's what I mean by compassionate commitment. Sorry, continue.
I'm glad you defined it.
I love that.
Thank you. No, and it's fun. The one support group I run, we do it every time, and at the end of every group. And the next time we always start by, how did your compassionate commitment go over the last week, and how were you nice to yourself if it didn't go perfectly, but also how can we keep stepping towards that?
So to that point, and also to elaborate, because I'm always concise and never long-winded. You want to spit up your coffee?
Yes.
Thanks for the try. I think we talked about the holidays. We had multiple live streams about the holidays and how challenging they can be for individuals with anxiety and OCD, how there's this expectation of being happy or feeling a certain way, or, and I think the new year also brings about a certain expectation of like, okay, I got to get it right this time and figure it out and all the things. So Calista, how do you approach, how have you approached or are approaching this new year in a way that you feel is value driven, and how, where are you at, and how are you looking forward to 2023?
Well, to start, I actually started with a new therapist today because I found that my old therapist wasn't fitting with me. And so I wanted to start with somebody new that kind of was a little bit more experienced, a little bit older. And I found that so far that made like a huge step in my 2023. And I'm really excited. I also feel like I'm working out a lot more, which helps my mental health so much. And I don't know. I feel like I don't do lists. That's never been my thing. I feel like they're kind of toxic. So just for me, my mental health is the most important thing since I do have both OCD and bipolar disorder. So like the combination of the two is a lot, and I need to make sure that I'm always looking out for myself. And so getting a new therapist, working out, eating right, all of that, I just kind of like stay true to that.
I want to follow up on that. How long had you been with your previous therapist?
A year. I gave it a year.
No, but I give you mad props because it's like once you feel like a certain level of comfort, it's like the idea of starting over is really intimidating. I have to explain myself. They have to learn. I blah, blah, blah. And it can be really, and I know so many folks that have been with the same therapist, for many, many years because it's comfortable, but being comfortable isn't necessarily what's effective, and specifically around the treatment that we need. And so I give you major. Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing I found is like, so I'm 24. So going back to the youthful comment, and at 24, I don't have like $1 million to spend on therapy right now. So I went with like a master's student who had just started in their OCD journey. And my OCD was too complex for her, I think, at the time. And so I ended up, the girl that I switched to has 20 years of experience, and I'm paying a little bit more, but I think it's worth it because you have to put the money in to get what you want.
Yeah. And I just to echo again what Ethan said, I think that's really brave to recognize, okay, this isn't a fit for what my case looks like right now or what I'm experiencing. And I've definitely been there with folks where it's been really comfortable and I haven't wanted to make that switch. So I think other folks hearing, if you are with the same person for a long time, sometimes that's great. But if you're in a place where you feel like treatment is stagnant or you need additional support or a different type of support, Calista, this is just such a great example of, all right, we're going to compassionately commit to take a jump in a different direction in 2023, which is scary, but you just let everybody know already that you're stepping towards something really beautiful.
But growing is moving forward. I mean, that's what's cool about it. Like, you can't stay stationary. It's like whether it was the right or wrong decision. If it was the right decision, you'll benefit. If it was the wrong decision, that will just lead you to the right decision. So there is no wrong decision, really. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I fought my OCD when I did it because I'm very scared of making people mad. It's like one of my obsessions. And so like breaking up with my therapist was like the scariest thing I had ever done, but I did it. So
okay, so let me also just say I'm so proud of you for that. And that might even be not to go off on a different note, but I wonder what that process was like for you, for anybody who's listening. Because we get questions all the time about how do you have a conversation with a therapist if you feel like you want to go in a different direction. So how did you get up the courage to do the therapist breakup? Because that's a really tough thing that I've struggled with.
Yeah, I did it over email, which might have not been the best, but I figured that writing a compassionate email that just kind of like this town hall is centered around, that was values based, because that's what we would work on in therapy. Like I needed something that was more valued centered when it came to therapy and not necessarily like she wasn't really fulfilling that for me. So I just kind of had to lead with my heart. And I guess it's a safe place to do confrontation like with therapy. So I just had to try it.
I think writing a values-based email that's true to who you are is awesome for folks to hear, because I have not always been, I don't know, in therapist switching super fully honest, because I haven't, like you, wanted to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
And you actually doing that is what this whole thing is about. And that's an exposure in and of itself. So, okay, I'm done with
No,
that. I just love that.
I love that too. Take it to Uma.
Okay, so Uma, kind of in terms of kicking off 2023 on the right foot, what does that look like for you right now? What are maybe some compassionate commitments that you're making? What are ways that you're stepping into this new year?
Well, in the irony of talking about the new year, I think for me, a compassionate commitment, and by the way, that term is so genius and actually profoundly changed the way I mean, I was so on the opposite end, like no resolutions, no nothing, New Year's, same me, like just trying to go the other direction because binaries. And seeing your phrase just really helped me take the best of all worlds. So thank you for that. To answer your question, I think one of the things, a compassionate commitment, is to not expect myself to magically change and then shame myself if I am just not an entirely different person in the new year going. It's for me, it's like the new year. I'm also in grad school, so a new semester, and it just, there's very much like a time change. So it feels like I should be transitioning. And I feel like I'm transitioning very much internally and in the way I take care of myself and the way I navigate life, but not necessarily in like, I am just better and everything is great. And I also am really sitting with, this is probably not new to anybody, and it's probably something people have thought about. And for me, I have logically thought about it, but really taking this internally and embodying it, the idea that I'm not either sick or better, at least for me, that's not what resonates, because for so long I've shamed myself for not just being completely good and I guess not cured, but like just not scoring on the Y box at all and just like completely managing my OCD 100%. Just like Callista, I have comorbidities. I have PTSD specifically that really changes the way I navigate OCD treatment. And so it's been, logically, I understand. I study this also as a neuroscientist because me search. It's one thing to logically understand that treatment and recovery looks a little different and can be more complicated, but still totally possible and worth it. It's just slower and harder. It's another thing to accept that and accept myself in the whole process and it not being linear and not just being constantly forward moving and just getting better and better and better. And I guess my compassionate commitment in all of that is to give myself more compassion and really truly understand that compassion doesn't mean this endless well of self-love and always being positive. It means accepting myself for where I am and how I am and it being okay and just honoring that and allowing recovery to look like what it looks like. Also, I think another compassionate commitment that I'm really leaning into is advocating for myself more, because I've spent a really long time doubting everything I think or feel because of my OCD and because, fear feels like many different things. And I think I've gone the other way and really swung, like anytime I feel fear or anytime I doubt myself, it's probably me, it's probably my OCD, and really losing out on the values part and, trusting myself. And so I'm working on just compassionately navigating, learning to advocate for myself again and, speaking my thoughts and living in the uncertainty that maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's OCD, maybe it isn't. And at the end of the day, I'm a human being and it's all a part of the process. So all of that.
That all resonates with me so much, Uma. Like, especially lately, I think I've with changes in life, good changes, like good stress, right? Mm-hmm. Changes in work, changes in life, changes in relationships, changes in everything. Like, it isn't, where'd you get that?
No. I was saying engagement. I was like,
I didn't give you that ring.
But it's a stressor.
I think for me, it's, I think those same things, Uma, but it's so easy to forget. And I start thinking that, it is linear. And if the progress isn't linear, then I'm doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's something, and I relate to Callista. I too diagnosed bipolar. I also have some PTSD. So like I relate, right? I'm not trying to one up anybody, by the way. I'm just, but I, that resonates. And I know, Uma, somebody commented at the bottom as well, that really, you hit the nail on the head as well. What was the comment? Lisa at 7:18 p.m. wrote, I had a terrible panic attack at work and had to go home. Felt like, I think, a loner instead of lover. but trying to realize I have anxiety and OCD that's going to happen. And Uma hit the nail on the head. I recently had something over Christmas that hit me hard, and it's so hard to not stigmatize yourself and lose that insight in the moment that it's a process, and it's a disease and a disorder, and it can pop up at any time. You can do everything right, and it still can decide to get angry and do things and convince us of things that, and it's so good to hear that and remember that the progress and process isn't a straight line, and it's okay to dip and valley. And I know I talk about that, but in the moment, I also forget and then start to beat myself up. So I really resonate with that, Uma.
And that means so much to me to hear. And I just want to acknowledge this space in general, because as a new advocate, it's really new to me to be able to show up in a space and be honest about all the things, and, not feel like I need to show up with like, I have this figured out and I am in recovery and I'm on the other side and now I'm talking about it, or, oh, I'm a scientist and like, I understand this stuff, so that means I'm better, and like, yada, yada, yada. Like being in a space to talk about recovery and like as a process and an ebb and flow, and with people who, I learned so much from. And, it's so easy to look at y'all and be like, oh, like you're recovered, you're better, you've been an advocate for so long, you do all these things, you're on the other side. Like, no, we're all here, we're all experiencing this, and we're just advocating for seeing it all, not just the best healed versions of ourselves. So thank you for this space. This means more to me than you'll know.
And we love both of you and just think the world of y'all. And it's a journey that we're on together. And I mean, I'm pretty open about the fact that as of 2019, I didn't know that I would be here because I was in such a tough place. I mean, I can think about the 2019 conference and seeing folks speak and thinking, that'll never be me. I'll never be in a place to talk about this. I'm never going to get better. There's something wrong with me, or treatment isn't going to work. I mean, all of those things. But Uma, to your point, I mean, when ERP very much saved my life, but at the time I was in a really public role in school chaplaincy with lots and lots of students, and I didn't want anybody to know I was seeking treatment, because it was like, if people think I'm struggling, they're not going to respect me in my role. They're going to see me as broken. They're going to see me as all of these things. And it was actually when I started speaking out to my students about the fact that I struggled too, and that I was in mental health treatment, that I started for the first time hearing from families, oh, wait, we actually can talk to you as the chaplain. We can tell you what our family is going through right now. And I think that's really the beautiful thing about advocating, is we get to show up and, yes, talk about evidence-based treatments and talk about hope, but also show up exactly as we are, which is perfectly imperfect humans who are on this journey together, that it can be really hard sometimes.
I'm just creating awkward silence. I think it's all about sitting with discomfort. So I was just going to wait and see how long people got uncomfortable for. I just want to remind people, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll be jumping to questions probably at 7:45. So please feel free to ask us anything you'd like about OCD or otherwise. Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, did we want to jump into some questions? Well, actually, I would love, before we jump into questions, I want to hear about their stories.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I really, because I know this is one of the first streams, I think, if not the first stream that we've really had y'all on that wasn't. So I would love for folks just to hear a little bit more about your story, and then we'll get into some questions and more about kicking off 2023. But I think one of the best things we can do as advocates is just share our stories and share who we are. So, I mean, I would love to go back, Callista, and just hear a little bit more about your journey with OCD and how you kind of found treatment to begin with. And then also, what does that look like for you now? How did that lead you to want to advocate and lead you to want to share your story, which is kind of a scary thing, but also really exciting?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed with OCD at the age of 10. So I was pretty young. And around that time, I started making videos online just because, I don't know, it was something to do. And now I'm a full-time influencer, but I have been my whole life. I make a lot of content centered around like mental health and mental well-being. And I got treatment at the age of 19 at UCLA. And it was really hard because I have harm OCD. So harm OCD had taken over my whole life. And I didn't think it would get better. I remember like there was a point where trigger warning. I was suicidal. I was like, it's never going to get better. And ERP saved my life. And doing the outpatient program at UCLA saved my life. And then from there, I used my platform. I switched gears and I started doing mental health advocacy for the most part. And that's where I am now. So I do videos online, and that's how I became a IOCDF advocate. And now I'm here.
Thank you.
I didn't realize you went to UCLA. Now I know. I want to know who. We'll talk offline. It's a great program.
I'm very open, but yeah, we'll talk.
No, it's a great program, and I love that story. And I want to ask you, because it's so. I mean, it really just goes to show. I think people ask us a lot, like, what are ways I can advocate, and you know, and we've always talked about, you know, advocacy doesn't necessarily have to look like being on a live stream, or, you know, I've always said it's as simple as sharing your story with one other person. Some of my most powerful moments as an advocate is literally just talking to someone else, and I share mine, they share theirs, and it impacts each other. And that in of itself is the essence of advocacy. But I love, Callista, like, you know, there's so many avenues to choose ways you can advocate. And, you know, I know one of the things that we look for in advocates are you know, people that just start advocating, you know, and now you just, in the way you've approached it, and using your personality and your sense of humor and just your everyday life and being willing to put yourself out there has been really brave, and it's refreshing to see. You know, it normalizes it, which is important, because, you know, there's obviously a stigma associated with mental illness. I don't know if anyone knows that, specifically OCD. I know, surprising, like mind-boggling. So, you know, I know we've really appreciated your content, you know, Callista, and I think that's, you know, one of a bazillion ways to advocate in meaningful ways. So,
and just for folks listening to hear, and then Callista, I want you to talk more about that, but it's such a great example, because we want everyone who's listening here. I really believe everyone who's in the chat, everyone who's commenting tonight, y'all are all advocating. And I didn't feel like that a couple of years ago. I felt like, oh, every single thing that you're saying and that you're doing is making a difference and is impacting someone else. And I think about our faith and OCD special interest group, which I always have to talk about, that if folks want to join, we can definitely drop a link for you. But we're doing, for the next 5 months leading up to the Faith and OCD conference, monthly advocacy topics. And the whole idea is around folks being able to use their different ways of advocating. So we actually have folks who are writing articles, folks who are doing live streams, but also folks who are painting, and folks who are writing, and who are doing dances, and who are writing songs, and all kinds of stuff. And I just want folks to know all of those are ways to advocate too. And Callista, I think you're giving a great example of taking something that you were doing that was a passion for you and saying, okay, how can I advocate with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Callista also got a lot of great conversation around switching therapists and how hard it can be, and so lots of props and love, and Uma, same for you. Lots of good comments. But go ahead.
Well, no, Callista had something else go ahead, Callista. I interrupted with advocacy stuff.
No, I think honestly, like, social media is such a great tool to do right now with advocacy. And that's kind of like what I've just chosen to do. Like yesterday, I posted my story on TikTok, and it's just crazy how many people it can reach. It got 500,000 views in a day. And so many kids, just because my viewership is mainly kids, and it's just kids being like, I have OCD and I didn't know, and this video helped me so much. And it's just crazy, like, the people you can reach if you put your story out there vulnerably.
It was an awesome video too, by the way. It was super vulnerable.
Thank you.
Callista.
Uma, you're in the hot seat here on Bachelor Nation.
How on earth do I summarize this succinctly enough? Tell me to speed up if I need to. But I guess I'll start with where I am now, because then I'll tell you how I got here, and it will make no sense to anyone except for someone who has OCD. But right now, and it's just such a stark comparison because of treatment. Right now, I am in my final semester of my master's degree in neuroscience. I'm a full-time graduate research assistant studying the neurobiology currently of comorbid chronic pain and psychiatric conditions. I also do independent research projects, and I've been studying comorbid PTSD and OCD in the context of psychedelic assisted therapy. And that's how I came to the IOCDF conference last year. And I'm also a board certified mental health peer specialist, and I support people worldwide, but especially with young adult cancer, because I'm a cancer survivor. And all of that I can't even believe I said any of that out loud, because I also am someone who, because of OCD and because of a lot of other things, left college after 2 years when I was 20 with a 1.83 GPA. I have a 4.0 now. I couldn't function. I was born with OCD, which I never thought I could say until I heard Ethan say it once. And I was like, okay, like I have permission to actually admit, like there's never been a point where I have not had OCD through my conscious memory. So I guess maybe 3 or 4 years old, but I was born with OCD. And I was also born into a lot of trauma, a lot of dysfunction, into an immigrant family with a lot of economic toxicity. And that confluence of factors resulted in a whole lot of stuff. But mainly, I didn't get the medical treatment that I needed. It just wasn't possible. And also mental illness is not a concept that I grew up with or that really exists in the culture I come from, which is a huge reason why I'm an advocate. Spoiler alert. So I just went years and years and years. Things were getting worse and worse and worse. I also had a lot of physical illnesses going on, and then more and more dysfunctional. I got by the skin of my teeth to college. I tried for 2 years, ended up with the 1.83 GPA and leaving. I truly believed I was incapable of anything, and I was just supposed to do, well, the only thing I could do was sing. I was a competitive singer-songwriter, so I just left my psychology degree, started singing and going to music school at Berklee College of Music. That was going okay because I really just spent my whole...
How did we not know that?
Oh, wait for it. Just wait for it. So wait for what happens. I know if I included, oh, by the way, I was also in a religious cult for that whole time for 7 years. So that's a part of that too.
Oh, the cult thing is old news. The music Berklee thing.
I'm like, how do I summarize all of this? But okay, I was at this point, okay, I'm 20, I'm in a cult. I meet my husband, I start leaving the cult, not realizing it was a cult. And I think I should talk about the cult a little bit, because OCD and trauma are why I ended up in a cult. Because I mean, joining at 14 years old in a religious cult that is known to be a religious cult, but I still thought it was a safer environment than what I was coming from, probably tells you what I was coming from. But also, I had all this uncertainty from the time I was a little kid of what is the point of life? Why do I suffer? Why does everybody suffer? And I looked at every religion I could at the time as a kid, trying to find an answer. And I didn't find an answer that really plugged that uncertainty piece until the cult. Which gave me an answer that kind of satisfied me. And so because of that fear, that incapability of sitting with uncertainty, I joined a religious cult at 14 and then left. But this all happened around the same time. I was just getting more and more dysfunctional. Then I was diagnosed with metastatic thyroid cancer when I was 22, and I had to have surgery on my neck to remove like the cancer in the lymph nodes, and it had metastasized and it was really bad. But one of the most interesting parts was my vocal nerves got permanently damaged and I couldn't sing anymore. I couldn't even speak for 3 months, and I had to do a lot of rehab and fun things. And now I can ramble to you all. But in that, I had to leave my music degree. I had to question what I was doing with my life and the point of life again at 22. And luckily at that time, I was forced to go into treatment for general mental health conditions because like I couldn't function at all. And it's also important to note that at that point I had finally been diagnosed with OCD. I had been in mental health treatment in and out, being hospitalized when I was first 13, but then I couldn't get the consistent treatment I needed. So as an adult, I was in and out as well. I was finally diagnosed with OCD, but I was one of the lucky people that I'm sure most people can resonate with that just received incorrect treatment for OCD for years in the name of just traditional psychodynamic, cognitive behavioral therapy, all of those things. And so I was telling myself I was getting better, and my version of getting better was I'm going to sit on my hands and not do compulsions, physical compulsions, because I knew nothing about mental compulsions, nor did my providers. And I assumed I was getting better because I just had a concept of what it is was going on with me. I got better enough, or at least able to not do compulsions enough to go back to school for my psychology degree because I couldn't sing anymore. I didn't know what to do. And I decided for one of the first times in my life, a value-driven choice was to try to go back to school just to show myself I could do it and to finish it. And I retook all my classes. I made all A's. I showed myself that I'm capable of more than I thought. And in the process of that psychology degree, I realized that all I thought about was why underneath the psychological concepts and things we were learning about, of course, informed by my own experience. And so I decided to pivot to neuroscience and neurobiology, but through a psychiatric mental health lens. And in all of that, in the transition from my undergrad to master's, I realized that my OCD was really bad and it probably wasn't sustainable to sit on my hands all the time. It made it a little easier to do because during the pandemic, we were at home. So I could sit on my hands more, like metaphorically and literally, but through Instagram and social media advocacy, I learned about actual, you would think it'd be from the internet, but it was from social media and advocacy. I learned about evidence-based treatment. I learned that ERP was a thing, that there were providers that actually specialize in OCD. I learned about mental compulsions, which were a huge part of my experience. I finally started treatment for that and realized and learned that comorbid PTSD and OCD work interestingly and inversely in treatment. So it's a little more complicated, but nonetheless, it gave me so much hope. And I have, in the name of not speaking binaries, I've grown so much. I'm not perfect. I'm not healed. I'm not cured, but I can be more functional than I am now, but I've grown so much that I thank goodness. That's why I'm here. And yeah, all through that, I now am here doing what I told you I am at the beginning. I had the privilege of sharing my research at the IOCDF conference this past year, as well as coming as a patient, which, let me tell you, like toggling all of those identities at once in front of so many different people who fill so many different roles in academia, in real life, it was so interesting. And it changed my whole life. I met Ethan and Katie by getting on a mic and just talking like I did it. I think every session I saw some comments.
Down an escalator. Yeah, we
yes.
were really we were doing an OCD awareness. Well, you were doing an OCD awareness commercial, but you asked a question in one of the talks, and we were up there, and we were like, we should chase her down. So we literally chased you down an escalator.
It was the best thing that ever happened.
But you wouldn't let me.
It was the best thing that ever happened. Now, if you did, I mean, when I tell, because I've been asked, spoiler alert, I got to be in the commercial and advocacy series that Ethan just so brilliantly created. And every time I explain how that happened, I'm like, well, they chased me down an escalator. And then they were like, you want to go do this in 2 weeks? And I was like, the uncertainty of maybe I'm going to go get murdered in 2 weeks or maybe not. I mean, I did it and I survived, spoiler alert. But that was one of the best experiences of my life, getting to meet everybody at the conference, especially y'all, and finding community. And in the name of being an advocate, being seen and accepted for all of my identities, because it is really hard to be in spaces where we're supposed to be talking about mental health and mental illness in research and academia. But also the minute you become someone who has it, there's still such a stigma. And I can't live a life where I hide that. Clearly, I'm right here telling you everything. And I am on the internet talking about it. And I will continue to, irrespective of the stigma I may face, because I'm here to change that and do whatever I can. And also to bring more people into our community who look like me, because I promise you, like the OCD conference, there was like every Indian person that was there found me and got my number and was like, hello, like, thank you for being here, and vice versa. And I know that there's more of us there. There's more people who look differently, who deserve access to treatment, who deserve not to go 25 years without evidence-based treatment due to lack of access and lack of education. So I'll stop there. Did I go too long?
Because Valerie, another one of our lead advocates, wrote, "Welcome to the Chase Me Down group." LOL. Because in 2017 I chased her down because to be an advocate and talk. So yeah, I'm not. It's not beneath me to chase anyone down, and I don't like to run to begin with. So. Anyway, go ahead, Kate.
No, I was just thank you both so much, and Uma, what you shared too about I could go on forever about even the faith piece and the religious cult piece, and how often I see that from a scrupulosity perspective, where individuals look for answers for so long, and unfortunately, sometimes unhealthy faith-based communities can kind of swoop in to folks who are vulnerable because they've been looking for those answers as a result of OCD, and we will have a whole conference where we'll talk about that in May, but. I'm so thankful for you and your willingness to share that, but also every part of your experience. And to your point, I mean, there's so many reasons that sharing your story is really challenging, whether that could be a cultural perspective or just you're a researcher. And what does that look like to be a researcher and share your story? I know that can be so scary. And I just have the utmost respect for you, and so glad that you are on this team and raising awareness and using your voice.
And all the love in the comments. I wish I could respond in the comments, but just thank you so much, everybody, for all the love for all of us.
That's what's great about these is you both have gotten a lot of love from inspiration on changing therapists to your own personal experiences, Uma. And so, and Christiana wrote, yes, my teen is happy to see another Indian with OCD, which is amazing. And yeah, just on and on. So, so with that, I think we should start getting into some questions. Unless I always want to, Callista, do you have anything to add about your own story or your go ahead?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, always when I hear somebody else talking, I'm like, oh, there's something else I want to add. So if there's anything that you want to share about advocacy or anything else, feel free to chime in before we get into questions.
I'm just so excited to be a part of the advocacy program. And also I am so excited for the conference because I'm going this year and I just want to experience it after hearing everything y'all have said.
It's amazing. It's an amazing experience, and it has been a game changer for so many people. Okay, cool. And I have questions for Callista too, because being in the entertainment industry, I used that platform initially to engage in what's it called, advocacy. That's what we're doing here.
That thing that we do sometimes.
That thing, and it's a great platform. I always wondered what, like, if YouTube had been around when I was 20,
what you would have.
teens or 20s. Instead, I was like,
never too late. Start now.
I had a YouTube channel in 2004, and like,
that's more.
But sidebar, I try to get him involved in social media advocacy. I was trying to create a reel with you outside a little while ago, and you were less than thrilled.
And that just goes to show you that, like, and this is, I think that you can advocate in a variety of different ways. There is no one right way to advocate. And I know we're not necessarily talking about advocacy here, but
I was trying to do a self-compassion reel where he was supposed to be laughing and he pretended to be dead on his lawn by the pool. Just literally a half hour ago, he was like straight out dead. So
it's a great reel though. You'll never see it, but it's hilarious.
Let's do an improv class together.
Listen, as a former professional actor, no one can afford me. That's it. That's the reality of it.
I think we need someone to follow you most hours of the day. And also that person can go through all the live streams you do and just make content out of that. Cause I don't even think you need to try. I think your existence is content. You know what I mean? Everything you say or do, just all these things you've already done in the live stream that could go viral. Just the faces
the Truman Show, but even.
Yeah, exactly. And willingly.
All right, I like it. You guys. Yes, so watch out for San Fran for Ethan and Katie chasing down the next advocate.
Yes, who knows? Who will it be?
You may be chased down. YouTube in 2004. No, seriously, I had a whole thing, and yeah. Anyway, okay. So let me jump to some questions. If you have questions, please load them in the comment thread. I copied some down because our comment thread got pretty loaded, so I wanted to start with. So we had a comment at 7:05 p.m. from SpongeBob SquarePants. I'm not laughing at him. The name along with the comment is funny. If something gross unexpectedly appeared before me and the memory of it later disturbs me, how to deal with it? It's a great question. I think we can all relate to that in some way. Callista, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go back to your values at this point. And I don't know. I mean, I think this one's hard. Do you guys have better? I mean, I get what's being said, but I just, Don't know if I have the right words right now.
No, that's
That's
okay.
totally fine.
What's
Go ahead,
coming
Uma.
to mind for me is, and this might just be because it's what I'm working on passively or actively right now, is learning that I can tolerate what comes in front of me or what comes in my mind, because for so long, everything that came in my mind, just I had so many judgments of it, and I also, I guess subconsciously didn't believe I could deal with it, and I did compulsions to no end to get rid of it, neutralize it, void it. And part of my work has been to just, as hard as it is, not accept the content of what shows up, but just accepting that it's there and accepting that I can handle tolerating it, and also have compassion for myself for needing to. That's something I've missed for a while. I think there was so much shame I personally had. So I was like, well, I guess I deserve it. So, but I'm allowed to have compassion for having to deal with it, and also just showing myself I can. And that doesn't need to be binary. Even if you end up doing a compulsion and it's not perfect, it's, you tolerated it as much as you did tolerate it, and you can tolerate it more later.
Yeah, I remember when I did harm OCD ERP, like you have to sit with the thought and like you said, like tolerate it. And like the more it goes on, like the more you can handle it, and then the better it will be later. So I feel like that's a really good answer.
Yeah, the more we anticipate nervously the thought, whatever it is, whether it's something you saw or something you imagined or whatever, right? The bigger we make the monster. It's almost like, Daddy, there's something scary in my closet. A kid might say, I should probably start with that, as opposed to be like, it's what I say right now. But and the idea of, being like, oh my God, I don't want to have this thought. It terrifies me. Whatever I saw, it's awful. Like the more we build that monster up, we have a lot of anxiety around that. And then when it comes, we tend to fend it off and fight it off. I think Uma perfectly summed it up, right? So it's this idea of, you don't have to like the thought or the visual, but being okay with it coming up, accepting that it may come up and you can deal with it when it does. It also doesn't mean that that's your reality now. It was something gross that happened before. And recognizing, coming back to the present moment. I'll give you a perfect example. Katie and I, this might be a little triggering. I won't go into detail, but Katie and I were driving down
For me?
here. What?
Trigger. Oh, I didn't know if it was triggering for me.
I don't know.
Like, okay,
I'm
thanks.
not responsible for your feelings, Katie. But we were driving down. We had an 9-hour drive. We passed a car accident.
Yeah.
And it was one of the worst car accidents we have ever seen. It was ripped in half. And there were in the road, there were people that had passed away in the road, and they were in bags. But like, I thought to myself, actually, SpongeBob, I thought, was like, what if I just see that, over and over again? And I was just like, you know what? If I do, I do. It was an awful scenario, and I hope I never witnessed it. But, and I've pictured it from time to time, but the more I just embrace the fact that it's a reality and it happened, and it doesn't have to, the more you kind of sit with it and as Kim Quinlan says, just invite it in, but don't serve it tea. I love that saying. The more that will eventually dissipate and go away.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I know Eric's talking about planned exposures, definitely helping you deal with spontaneous things that might pop up. And I think as a part of that, a big tool for me always is showing confidence and even sarcasm, especially when something is popping up later on. And it sounds like SpongeBob, if you've seen maybe that gross thing and have the memory later that's popping up and disturbing you, it might be popping up more than once. And as a result, we can say, okay, we're going to kind of label this as OCD. If it looks like OCD and smells like OCD, probably OCD. And every time this comes up, I'm going to be super confident around it. And I'm even going to be really excited because it's an awesome opportunity for me to engage in exposure and response prevention. So I really love the tool. If something that's probably OCD for me pops up, saying like, yes, I just had this intrusive thought again. I just had this gross thing pop up in my mind. Huzzah, I get to sit with this. I get to engage in ERP, and I get to make my OCD a little bit smaller. That does not mean that I necessarily feel like that internally, but I think there's a big difference with what we do with our body when we say, oh, this is something that I really don't want to see. It really disturbs me. I want it to go away, versus actively saying, yeah, I have this really disturbing image in my head. Bring it on. Yes, I can fight my OCD. And for me, approaching it with confidence, even if it's sarcasm, every single time it comes up, kind of scares the OCD away and makes it a little bit smaller.
For sure. Let's see here. Just real quick, Katie, to you, Betsy at 7:24 p.m. wrote, as a guidance counselor, Katie, I was struggling with others knowing about anything about my OCD, speaking to when you came out as a chaplain and being nervous to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say I've been there. That was a very long journey for me. And I was, again, terrified. And I know everyone's story is different in terms of how you start to share about that. And for me, it was really, it started in really small ways. And I gained more confidence again when I started hearing from students across faith traditions and their families. Oh, wait. We want to talk to you about this, and this is what's going on in our family. Can you help us talk to our rabbi or our imam or our priest, whatever that looked like? And it was ultimately starting to do that work that led me into where I am now, which is doing faith and OCD work full time, doing clinical chaplaincy around OCD and doctoral research in this area, and just loving all of it. But it's really interesting because I look back and just the terror of my life will be taken away if anyone in this role in schools know that I struggle with these intrusive thoughts, particularly because a lot of mine related to violent and sexual type intrusive thoughts that I thought, what will they think of me in this system? And I'm very thankful, at least in my experience, that sharing that not only helped me to become a more authentic version of myself, but I think it gave my students permission to do the same, and ultimately led me to a space where I feel like I get to fully live out my vocation and my values. So I would just tell you, it looks different for every person, what we share and what that journey looks like. But I would encourage you that you do deserve to be authentically you in your role. And I'm always happy to talk with you more about what that looks like in your life.
I love that, Katie. Thank you. Deliana at 7:24 p.m. said, can you do counseling with you if you were located in a different state? You want to quickly take that, Katie?
Yeah. So generally, well, it really depends. Most clinicians or providers are licensed in a particular state. Thankfully, it used to be that you would have to go to the office, but thankfully now a lot of treatment providers are seeing individuals virtually in HIPAA compliant platforms. So typically, if someone is located in your state, you can see them even if you're in a different location. In terms of seeing folks outside of state, that's a little bit more limited, but there are some parameters with which you can do that, particularly if you're seeing a psychologist that's a part of the Psi Pact. That means that I think it's 48 states now can actually see individuals who are a part of the Psi Pact. So if you are in Kansas, that means you can see somebody over in Georgia. So if you are finding someone as a part of the Psi Pact, that's possible too. But in terms of kind of locating someone who is licensed to treat in your area, would encourage you to check out our IOCDF directory that has all of the clinicians who are licensed and practicing in different states.
Or you could do what I do, and when you discovered you were moving across the country, force your therapist and pay for them to get licensed in the state you were moving to, because you refused to get another therapist. It took him.
People do. So sidebar, people do that. I work in chaplaincy. So licensure stuff it's very different. So I work with folks kind of all over the place. And I have somebody right now who is going to have to move twice over the next 3 years. And they're having their clinician like relicense in those 2 other places. And I was like, good for you. Like, way to go. Let's do it.
Find a good one. You don't let them. Yeah, seriously. Real quick, Grace wrote at 7:28 p.m. Uma, I remember hearing you speak during a Q&A at the conference in Denver. You said something about lack of diversity within the OCD community, and I really resonated with what you said. I'm so happy to see you here at this live stream and appreciate your advocacy efforts, with a smiley face. Also, real quick, I'll jump to Betsy asked, where can I see Callista's video? This is on TikTok, Callista?
Yeah.
What is your handle on TikTok?
It's just my name. It's Callista Dwyer.
Okay, cool. We can actually, if you want to just type it in the
private
chat, we can.
Yeah, I'll send it.
Amanda post
and
it.
You put it on. I think you had it on your Instagram too.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll give you a link to Callista's content on Instagram, which then links to TikTok, and you can see all her videos, which are excellent. Real quick, I'm actually going to have Callista tee this off. Let me find the question. So at 7:29 p.m., Katerina asks, I'm going to McLean next month. She has a tentative date. They have a tentative date. I've been in treatment for OCD for 4.5 years-ish. And I know that it's going to be hard, and I'm really, really scared. What is it like being around treatment 24/7? So this is a great, great question. And I'm going to take the residential side of it, since I have some residential experience. But before I do, I actually want Callista to touch on a little bit of the intensive outpatient piece of it, because that's sort of the in between. So Callista, yeah. So first, can you define quickly what intensive outpatient is, sort of what you did at UCLA, and then I'll move into residential.
Yeah, so intensive outpatient basically means you go for like 5 hours a day or like 4 hours around that time stamp, and you do treatment. So like it's mine was 2 hours of personalized therapy and then 2 hours of ERP and then 1 hour of group therapy. So that's kind of how it was set up for us to do our treatment while I was there. But as for being around or being in treatment 24/7, I was petrified of being around people with OCD. I thought that that was going to trigger me even more. I thought treatment was going to hurt me. I was really afraid of all of the things. And I will say, I missed treatment. I think it was honestly such a great time, and it was horrible at the same time. But like, if you, it is what you make of it, and I made so many amazing friends while I was there, and the community and my therapist and everybody. It's not as scary as people I think it's going to be. Oh wait,
I
can
think
you
that's
see me?
great insight.
Yeah.
So I was in residential. Oh, go ahead, Callista.
Oh no, I
Or did
was like,
Uma?
can you see me?
Oh, I think our internet's delaying a little bit, so apologies. I don't know if we're caught up.
Can you hear me saying this?
Yes, that's on. Thank you.
Okay, you're
Uh-huh.
good.
Sure. So I was at McLean, where you're going in 2000, the end of 2010, 2011. I talked about my experiences quite a bit in residential. You know, what I can tell you is it's an amazing opportunity to solely focus on you and you know, whatever it is you have to work on. And I think that, you know, I know it can seem scary, and you know, people are scared for different reasons. You know, I was scared because I had to leave my parents and go to a different state, and you know, and I think though for most part, the idea of potentially, you know, tackling a piece of your OCD that is terrifying to you, you know, or what that looks like, something higher up in your hierarchy. You know, I was going to ask you a follow-up question, Katerina, which was, you know, you said you've been in treatment for your OCD. I'm wondering if that treatment has been exposure and response prevention or some other type of treatment. Feel free to answer that question. If what kind of treatment have you been doing? But from my own experience, I will tell you that prior to going to residential, I had done intensive outpatient, and going with the understanding of what ERP was or is, how to approach it, really, really was helpful. I was terrified, but residential changed my life. I met people there that changed my life. You know, and if you know my story, you know, I got kicked out of residential 2.5 months after going there. Oh, perfect. Okay, Katerina just answered. So if you know my story, yeah, I got kicked out, and you know, even after that, and I deserved it, by the way. Like, it wasn't like somewhere, I totally deserved it.
Yeah, that is not common, just for folks to hear that. Yeah.
But I think, you know, what's ultimately scary is this idea of like, what am I going to have to face? You know, and am I going to have to face something that I've been struggling with, you know, or have been able to get over this hill or this mountain? And yet, Katerina wrote, ERP has been a part of it. Yes, my therapist used to work at McLean. So I would there's a lot of optimism and hope there. One, if your therapist worked at McLean, there's a good chance that they have a sense that you'll fit well into the milieu, they call it, right? The system, the way it works there, the approach. So there's a lot of hope and optimism there. You know, is it going to be particularly fun? It depends how you frame it. I think there's a lot of camaraderie. You meet people. There's lots of opportunities for socialization, and you know, the way it's set up. You know, you have lunches and dinners together and things like that. You know, it isn't 24/7 treatment therapy. It is not a locked unit, you know, where you can't get out. You know, you go on field trips and you can leave the building at any time when it's not during treatment, and you do ERP guided, and you work with your clinician, and there's counselors, and it's really just about 24/7 support and immersing yourself in a atmosphere where you can solely focus on what you need to focus on without distraction, and then taking those skills and tools back to the outside world and incorporating them there. So if there's something that you've been stuck on, if there's an area of your own OCD that have you found particularly challenging, you know, residential is such a good place to work that out. And I know that I know that residential can sometimes, for some people, feel like a punishment. It's like, I don't want to go to residential. I don't need to go to residential, but like, it's not. It's an incredible opportunity. And I think, I mean, you have a tentative date. I think that's super exciting. I can tell you now, I've talked to a number of people that are dying to get into McLean. There's a 4 to 6 month waiting list. This is an incredible opportunity to really get the skills and tools, hone what you've already learned, and put this thing to bed, as best you can. And so, what it's like being there, it's an opportunity to work on yourself, short-term pain, long-term gain, work on the investment now so you can have the rest of your life. So, is it a European vacation? No, not really, but it allows you to go on a European vacation later and actually enjoy it. So, keep the values, keep the why you're there, why you're doing it really close to you. And so when you have those hard days where you're doing those exposures and you're just exhausted, remember why you're there. Remember why you're choosing to go there. And congrats for choosing to go there and being brave. But I know so many people that have made lifelong friends at residential, and it's just an amazing opportunity. So, go be amazing, be your best, strongest self, give yourself lots of compassion when it's hard, but I think it's an incredible opportunity. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on that front.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being so honest about being scared, and thank you for allowing yourself to be seen in that, because it's really hard to admit that. And, it's easy to just tell yourself you need to feel grateful that you even get to get treatment, or that's all going to be okay, and try to push away the fear and do it, without the fear. But the truth is, it's probably not going to happen without the fear. I can't predict the future yet, but I'm just kidding. But in all honesty, thank you for being honest, and it helps people like me know that I'm not the only one that feels scared of things like this. And you're allowed to be scared and do it anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, everything falls around that, being scared and doing it anyway. And I think, as we move through OCD treatment and also just life, I think through OCD treatment, we learn so many things about life, that most of the things that are worthwhile and that bring joy and value probably make us a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit scared or a little bit tough to dive into. So I love that you're, Katerina, being able to say that that's where you are, and that's what you're navigating, and that you're still leaning into it. And I think that, leaning into all of the tough stuff, I always say sticking with the ick is going to be a way to get to this big, beautiful, awesome life that you deserve.
And the last piece is this radical faith, right? Like trusting other people have your best interest in mind. And I know it's scary because OCD can be so convincing. It's our own brains. And it's like, well, why should we not trust ourselves? Right. But I mean, it goes a long way. And, your therapist who worked at McLean said this might be a good choice for you, a good opportunity for you, no matter what's screaming in your head, I would try to listen to that and embrace that fact. And, even though you can't see the other side of this right now, trust a lot of what we're saying because we've been through it, and while there's no guarantees, as Uma said, although it sounds like she's going to figure out a way to predict the future, and that's super exciting. So when you do, let us know, although you'll have already known, you let us know, and it gets convoluted from there. So, but yeah, I echo everybody's sentiment. So congratulations, Katerina, on treatment, and definitely keep us updated. Don't mention my name, please. No, I'm really good friends with everybody there. So if you have further questions, pop on, we're happy to help. So congratulations. 8:01 p.m. Margaret Young. Do others lose touch with their true self-love when experiencing an OCD episode? It felt like there were two of me. I lost my inner voice. I think we should go around. I think we can all relate to this to some extent. Callista, I like to go with whoever nodded first. That's my system. Callista did nod first. So Callista, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I remember during my worst OCD episode, I just had no self-love. I was very unconfident. I was very I just didn't like myself. I was really upset with how things were, and I had no confidence. And I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I couldn't trust my own mind, and not being able to trust your own mind makes it really hard to be confident. And so I think, that was really hard. And I feel like what gave me back my confidence was really trusting the process that is ERP.
That's great advice, Callista. Uma.
I would take this a step further and say that Well, given that I feel like most of my life has been an OCD episode for various reasons, I have really struggled in recovery with not knowing or having any concept of what is my true self and also what is self-love. Like every time I heard the word self-compassion, it was just like I had to say like self-compassion. Oh my goodness. Like it couldn't even, it was so like foreign to me that I had to make fun of it to myself. But I don't feel like I lost my inner voice in a sense. Like I just didn't even have access to it. And that's not entirely true because I've still, had feelings that were probably correct and would have probably led me to things that would have saved me and did save me, like getting out of the cult. But I just want to relate to you that that is, in my opinion, so normal because of like everything Calista said, when your mind and your brain is telling you that everything is a threat and that, is having you doubt your reality. It is so hard to, access. And I think in the way Calista said it, ERP giving her so much, freedom and helping her bridge this gap. In my mind, it's sitting with the uncertainty. As part of ERP for me, like that part specifically really helps me because a question, an obsession, frankly, became like, what is my true self? Is my true self this? Is my true self that? What is my true self saying? Do I hear my true self? Like that became a whole thing once I started understanding that there was such a part of me that was screaming at me all the time that probably wasn't my true self. And in being so afraid of not knowing which one was my true self, I realized I kind of just have to, or not have to, but I'm choosing to be okay with maybe this is my true self, maybe this is OCD, maybe this is PTSD, maybe this is Shrek. I don't know, but I'm just gonna go forth and I'll make it through anyway. So and I'll figure it out as I go, or I won't figure it out, and that's okay too. And oddly enough, I think that is my true voice. So just want to normalize that for you, know that you're not alone.
I love that. Thank you, Uma. Kate, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah. I don't, this brings something up for me, and I don't often talk about this on live streams, but a big piece of my story was feeling like I was so engulfed in my obsessions and I had been engaging in compulsions for such a long time that my insight was pretty low, and I was very much questioning the person that I was. I navigated harm OCD, as many folks do, kind of false memory type stuff. And for me, I was working in a pretty intense job with trauma and loss of kids. And I lost someone in my life to suicide that was really, really, really challenging for me. And my OCD latched onto it. It made me question my reality. It blamed me for it in really tangible ways. And I got to the point as a chaplain and as a minister that I was doing funerals and up there wondering, am I responsible in some way for these losses in tangible ways? And have I just forgotten? And the harm OCD got pretty bad for me, where I was serving as a chaplain with kids during the day and helping with mental health struggles, and then going home at night and literally trying not to call the police on myself for crimes that I didn't commit, because I thought I was just this horrific human being who didn't deserve to be alive. And it was this just push and pull where I felt like I was living two completely different lives. During the day, I was smiling chaplain, making every kid feel better, while living this internal dialogue of what if I'm secretly this horrific murderer who deserves to die. And it felt like very much there were two of me. There was the external me, and then there was the internal me, where I really deeply hated myself. And for me, kind of to Uma's point, I felt like, how could I possibly give myself compassion in the midst of these thoughts and in the midst of everything that feels so stuck for me? And exposure and response prevention was really hard for me. Yes, it very much saved my life, but actually starting to get to a place of self-compassion and self-love was this huge turning point for me, where for a long time, and I see, yeah, Margaret, you resonating, I felt like, again, how could I deserve compassion? I felt like I'm going to try to get better for my students. I'm going to try to get better for my family. I'm going to try to get better for all of these people. And getting to a point where I started to give myself permission to get better for me was a really huge component, to be able to say, okay, I'm willing to sit with the uncertainty around all of this really scary stuff, the end of the day, I'm going to trust it's probably OCD, but I can sit with it. And I'm still going to believe even 1% that I deserve to get better for me, that I believe I was created to live a beautiful life, despite all of the stuff and bad words that I want to say right now that my OCD made me think about myself. And that was a huge component for me, giving myself that permission. And I think that's where, for me, it stopped being there's the external Katie and there's the internal Katie who thinks all these things and hates herself. It became, I can sit with all of this and I can still be the one true Katie, and I can love myself and trust that it's probably just OCD.
I have beautifully said, Kitty.
Thank you.
I have so many thoughts on this particular subject, Margaret, and I resonate with what everyone is saying, and it's like I'm getting emotional because I have so many things are coming up for me. I think Uma touched on a lot of things that I relate to, which was, being born with OCD and slowly realizing as I started entering treatment that, oh wait, do I even know who I am? Because all I've ever known is OCD. And how do I recognize that? And who am I without OCD? And what am I even like? And what are my values? And it was really scary. And did I ever have a true self? And what was that true self like? I'll say that was one of the scariest parts of potentially getting better was discovering that, or discovering that I didn't have that. What I will say though is, and I always use this analogy, is very much for me, like if OCD is snow, which I love snow, so I hate to make the comparison, but if OCD is just this layer of snow, I found that as I engaged in treatment and finally started to get better after a tumultuous start, like, spring, flowers started to pop up from the snow, and I would start to look and be like, oh, that's a value. Oh, that's something I care about. Oh, that's something. And I started to look back and go, it was always there within the OCD when I was sick. It was just the things that I could never follow through on. Like I would make commitments. Those were all value driven. I would always back out of them because I was terrified. That was OCD. So like I could look back and go, oh, that was Ethan. And that was when the OCD took over. And that was Ethan. Oh, and that was when the OCD took over. And so like, as the snow OCD slowly melted and spring came, I don't mean to be too cliche here, but like it became evident like who Ethan was, and I'm still discovering who I think it's a lifelong process. Who I was 10 years ago is not who I am 5 years ago, who is not who I am now. And so, but definitely like, being willing to take that step. The other thing I wanted to touch on is I think OCD is brutally cruel. And I'll go into a little bit darker part of my own journey where I don't talk about, but the first time I was in a psychiatric hospital, which is when I was at my worst. I had never had the right treatment. I had been in therapy for 17 years, multiple therapists, multiple medications, but had never, ever been, had the right treatment. And I was off my medications and I was extremely ill with OCD to the point where it was borderline delusion. I was just so fixed on my beliefs that I was accidentally going to harm myself, and so terrified. And I remember the first few days I was in this place, which was in and of itself terrifying. Two things happened, and this really resonated. One thing was I was standing in front of a mirror in the bathroom, and like I was looking at myself, and I didn't recognize myself, but I could see like the small piece. It was almost like the scene in Get Out where he's going backwards in the darkness. Like I could see Ethan deep down, and I started slapping my face because I was like, you're there. Why can't you just, and I was slapping my face over and over again to try to get me to wake up. Like I could see myself there, but I couldn't reach myself. So like, I really felt like I was losing who I was, and OCD was really taking over. And it's like, if you're on the fence about getting treatment, like, listen to me, get treatment. OCD can get nasty. I mean, really, really, really nasty. And I don't say that to scare you, but I say that to scare you. So, the other piece of it is, OCD is also one of those rare disorders where it feels like that there's two cameras on simultaneously. And I remember being in the psychiatric hospital and watching individuals that were either schizophrenic or that had psychotic episodes, and I was jealous because they didn't recognize that they were sick. They were just experiencing their reality, and I was jealous of that because I knew that I had OCD, that I was sick, and yet I can't help it. Like, why do I have to see myself suffering and feel helpless around that? It felt so torturous in that way, and it felt so cruel. And of course, I don't wish them to have schizophrenia or psychotic episodes or anything, but the fact that they didn't see themselves in the mirror suffering, they were just experiencing that. I was truly jealous of that. I didn't want to know how badly I was suffering. I just wanted it to go away and be lost in my own world. I think OCD is really cruel in that sense, because we do have these two cameras. One is the camera of, well, I know this doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be doing that. I see the reality for what it is. And then you have the other camera of the OCD going, but what if, don't take the chance. No. And these two wars going on simultaneously. It's what's exhausting. It's what's exhausting. So, I mean, all this stuff came up for me when you talked about losing yourself and how I relate to it. So, 100%. But what's beautiful is, to everybody's point, is through treatment and therapy and support and being here, your own beautiful self comes to the surface on it, and so, don't be afraid of discovering who you truly are. Individuals with OCD 100% are just incredibly amazing, smart, brilliant, talented human beings across the board. I've never met one that is not one. Like, we're weird animals, but you people, but anyway, so that's my, yeah.
Well, and I love what you just said, and it brought this one other piece for me that we haven't mentioned. Of, I think often in that experience, at least this is what I experienced. Y'all can say if this is what you experienced, where you feel like you have these two identities, and you, for a long time for me, it was, well, I just want to get back to how I was before. Can I just get back to that place? And the interesting thing that I finally came to is I never got back to the place that I was before, but I'm actually really glad. I think I'm at an entirely new place. And it doesn't mean that I like having OCD, or it doesn't mean that I, want to relive any of those really hard moments. But I actually think the treatment journey and the ERP journey and the community that I've met as a part of this journey and accepting uncertainty, I've become a person that I'm even more proud of than the person I was before all of that happened. And I always tell clients, I think we really can find beauty in the brokenness. Or I know Ethan and Liz always say, turn your mess into your message, or your pain into your purpose. And there's something really beautiful about going into this journey and not necessarily trying to get back to who you were before, but taking all of the pain that you've experienced and finding the beautiful you that's there deep down under all of that through this experience.
Yeah. And the final caveat to my story is I got better, right? And how grateful I was that it was OCD. And, and there may be people here with schizophrenia. I mean, there's treatment for everything, but the amazing thing about OCD is it's extremely treatable. It's extremely treatable. And how amazing. I made this connection a while ago, and I mentioned it to Katie, which is like, how amazing is it where if you have another disease, cancer or MS or anything else, and you say, I want to get better, you have to go through a series of steps and doctors and treatments and protocols. But like with OCD, once you learn the skills and tools, if you're suffering, you can literally say to yourself, I want to get better, and have the skills and tools to do it in your own head. And like, if you actually think about that for a moment, because you are doing sort of internal brain surgery, you're rewiring your circuits. Uma can attest to that. She's a genius. I'm not. I just sound like a genius. I'm a liar. I'm a fake. I'm a phony. I'm a fraud. I'm just well-spoken. But I'm not smart. But I'm fishing for. But anyway, but the reality of it, but it's kind of mind-boggling to think about the fact that you can treat yourself when you're having an OCD episode, or an anxiety. You can treat yourself. You don't need anything else to treat yourself. You just need the skills and tools, and that isn't putting a lot of pressure. But what an amazing opportunity! I just think that's mind-blowing. I really do.
Welcome to neuroscience, Ethan. I found your next calling. And also, you said you were saying all that stuff about yourself. Says the person who's the genius who made like the coolest commercials of all time to change the world.
Stop.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
And I am feeding it.
I know. Okay, Duluth. Hey, Duluth, good to see you. 8:12 p.m. Do y'all incorporate medication and mindfulness practices into your? That's what I said. Oh, meditation. Yeah. Oh. Do you all incorporate meditation and mindfulness practices into your recoveries? How do you maintain a daily sense of awareness and present momentness personally? Great question. Let's start with Callista.
Yeah, I'm really big into floating, which is kind of like a new method of meditation. But basically, you submerge yourself into a tank and you float for 60 minutes to like high frequency sounds. And I found that it's given me like a a higher sense of self-awareness, I want to say, and just it gives me, it's the most peaceful I feel. And I am somebody that's very high strung, and I'm not ever relaxing or doing anything like that. But this is the only way that I can meditate and really like sit deep with my thoughts and sit and think about everything I'm going through and like how I want to deal with it and how I'm processing it. So I highly recommend floating if you've never tried it. And meditation didn't really work for you. I mean, this is meditation, but just a different form.
I love it. I'm excited to hear. One of my former students actually tried to get me into that years ago, and I've been curious ever since then, and it made like a huge
so
impact.
good.
So I'm super curious. So I want to try that now. Let's do that on vacation.
Yeah, it's very
bathtub?
weird.
Not in the hotel bathtub, like in a legitimate place.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, you like go to like a, like they're usually just in like a, not like a
Sensory
ball.
deprivation. Yeah.
Yeah, but you float in like salt, and it's an experience, but I swear it works.
It's also an exposure with like what you're sitting in.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point
Giving
where
that
I
to you.
close the tank. So like I sit in darkness now. It's crazy.
I love that. Uma, what are some things that you practice?
Well, I think for me, it's interesting because I went looking for, just like religion, I kind of looked for every possible solution I could think of to the distress that was in the mess that was my life. And so I learned transcendental meditation. I had like a very intense, I guess what they called a meditation practice through the cult. So I have kind of negative associations to that, but there's a result, I swear. And I also just any sort of, like, my husband did this thing called Vipassana, which is like a 10-day silent, complete meditation thing. My last name's Chatterjee. I can't do it, but he did. And there's a lot. My point is,
I've come up with that. She's been using that for years.
My whole life. It's my defense. I actually didn't speak till I was like around 4 years old, and now I'm just making up for it the rest of my life. Einstein syndrome, it's actually a thing. Anyway, so my point is, I went through meditation and all these practices, and I say that because I approached them personally as, wow, this needs to solve my problems. And it was so scary because I didn't have the tools with ERP and awareness of, myself at the time. So I would go into meditation. I would then start bearing the brunts of my thoughts, and we're like, shit, this is supposed to be peaceful. This is supposed to like help me. And this is actually just distressful. And I would just, do compulsions the whole time. So I wouldn't recommend that version of it. The best version of meditation or presence that's ever helped me in any way is literally sitting there. And I guess this is the true definition of the word, but for people with OCD, it might not feel that, is sitting there and feeling and experiencing whatever comes up and just accepting it. Because for so long it would be like, oh, I'm feeling this, I need to get this away, and then get to some semblance of peace that I have not ever experienced in my life. Instead, it's just, oh, I'm having this thought, I'm experiencing this thought, and I can, once again, like I said before, I can tolerate it. Cool. And then another one might come up. Cool. And I get to watch it, and I don't have to engage with it. So I think you can incorporate meditation or presence in literally anything you do. It doesn't have to be a practice where you sit down or have the most perfect meditation cushion or, room with the blinds drawn. If you do and you want to do that, great. But you can also just do it in your daily life. I mean, that is, in my mind, ERP and treatment in general.
Yeah, I think Deleuze, it's good to see you, by the way. I think the key for those of us with OCD and anxiety is what you said in your question, which is, how do I maintain a daily sense of awareness? And I think really what we're talking about is, can I become present daily rather than do it all day or daily, right? So it's like, for me, I think those of us with OCD, which are most of us here, we kind of have this black and white view of things, all or nothing. I think meditation is such a great, mindfulness and meditation are such great skills and tools to have to back up the treatment, right? To give ourselves more tools and skills. They're not treatments in and of themselves, but they're great practices. But we also have to celebrate our wins. And I think for us, like I used to look at, oh, well, I was in my head most of the day. So that's, I failed at present mindedness. But then my therapist would say, well, how many times did you come back to the present moment? I'm like, oh, probably hundreds of times. Like, well, then how is that a bad day? Right. So it's not so much like, can I maintain this perfectly present? The mind doesn't work that way. We're going to float away at different thoughts. Right. So it's this idea of, well, how long can I be present for without the challenge of like being present the entire day? Can I have a conversation with somebody and be like this live stream? My brain has floated multiple times, usually when Uma's talking, but but it's a joke, Uma. It's a joke. You got jokes. I got
No, it
jokes.
wasn't. It's okay.
He was joking.
Don't make her feel better. She's like picking her nails now. Like, oh my God.
Who, me? No, I really am.
But no, I think that's really, it's not an all or nothing practice. I think that there's lots of shades of meditation and lots of shades, right? And if we can have, 5 minutes of present mindedness in a day, take a moment, notice colors, notice sounds and smells. If I can, turn to Katie afterwards and go, man, I was really in the zone on that town hall for an hour and a half. That's a huge win, especially for our brains, which are firing a billion times a minute a second. So yeah, great question, Deleuze.
And just to add one,
we're running out of time.
Okay. I mean, this was, you said a lot of this, but it was a big realization. I spent a lot of time going on interfaith immersion trips with students in my interfaith chaplaincy days. And I remember the first time of going to really a specific Buddhist meditation center and hearing from a monk that it was, again, not about sitting there and thinking about nothing, but about every time, like as Ethan said, that you drift, noticing that and coming back. And I love the application of that, not just throughout daily life, but also to when intrusive thoughts pop up. And that's been a really key component for me, as opposed to being like, I got an intrusive thought again, actually flipping it to, oh, yay, I got an intrusive thought. I noticed it. Now I have an awesome opportunity to come back to the present moment. And the same way that we might approach meditation or mindfulness of, oh, look, I noticed myself drift away, I'm going to come back, that we can do that same thing with intrusive thoughts. Oh, hi, intrusive thought. There you are again. Oh, I get to come back to the present
and
moment.
The fact that you notice the intrusive thought, if you remember, before, if you're in treatment, like to the point where it was all automatic, you're like, I just start compulsing. And the fact that you then recognize and you start creating that space, right? The diffusion between the thought and the action. I mean, that in and of itself is mindfulness.
Yep.
I want to throw it to Katie real quick. I want to support Kayla a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. So at 8:19, these are a few comments, so I'll just read them. At 8:19, Kayla wrote, Katie, thank you. I can relate to your struggles. I still feel like I don't know who I am. And I cannot remember the last time I did. I am so engulfed by OCD and struggle to resist doing compulsions. I am trying not to cry listening to this live stream. 8:19 p.m. On the other side, I'm glad that both Callista and Uma have gotten treatment so early in life, and they are trying to make that happen for others on here as well. Do you have any thoughts to?
Yeah, I mean, one, just I'm sorry for where you are right now, and I very much remember being there, and again watching live streams and feeling so isolated and so alone, and I don't know, so much like, oh, I'm the only one who doesn't know who I really am, and I'm different, and all of these things. And I want you to hear from me in this moment. I've been there, we've been there, and we absolutely can relate to you too. And I know it feels like you don't know who you are from the OCD perspective. But I always like to remind myself that I really do. There's some element of wise mind down there, that it's Katie is there and you are there, and OCD might be covering it up with all of its crap and all of its stuff and all of that. But under that, there is this core of who you are that OCD just happens to be latching onto right now and twisting and turning and doing all of its things. But just like you noted with Uma and Callista with treatment, that same exact thing is possible for you. And by engaging in treatment and by taking the steps towards your values, even if OCD makes you question your values, because sometimes that happens too when you're questioning who you are, the person that you are is still there. And regardless of what your OCD is saying in this moment, I know it's a big, beautiful, awesome person who deserves this just wonderful, amazing life. And even if OCD is making you feel like you can't step towards that life right now, you can, and we're on this journey with you, and you are not alone.
And it's also not too late, whatever age you are, Kayla. I know you've been on lots of streams before. I didn't get help till 31. Valerie, who's lean advocate, who's here now, didn't get help to her mid-50s. I've talked to people in their 60s and 70s. It is absolutely never too late. And also, like to Katie's point, I sat there and watched everyone talk to me and be like, you can do it, and I'm here. And I would sit there and be like, you're not in my shoes. You don't get me. You don't know where I am. My situation is different. And never thought I would be the one ever speaking. And the reality is we can all be here. We're all capable of it.
I saw Ethan speaking when I was really sick in person at a conference before we had
She
ever
was like,
spoken.
I'm going to marry him.
No, that is not what I said at all, actually. I mean, not in a bad way, but I remember actually thinking, because it was a comedy thing that you were doing, and I remember you being up there laughing, and I was so ill at that point. It was like everything I could do to get in the door and like sit down there. I didn't want anybody to know I was there in my chaplaincy role or anything. I just thought I was this horrible person. And I remember seeing you up there like laughing, and I was thinking, I'm never going to be there. Like, I don't deserve to be laughing or smiling or having fun. How can that guy be up there telling jokes and like being funny? He doesn't know what I'm going through. And it's really interesting to be in a very different place now. And again, I want anyone listening who's feeling the same way, maybe as we laugh or as we joke around or anything like that, that to hear that we have been there and you so deserve to be able to smile and live your life despite of and in spite of OCD.
And I just want to add one tiny last thing, which is I am the newest to treatment and to recovery from anyone here. And I want you to know that what you're seeing here, you're seeing us and you're seeing me, and you mentioned me in the comment, and I really appreciate that. And I also am still in a part of my treatment and my recovery where it's not so linear, and I still, do struggle with compulsions and mental compulsions, and it's better than it was, and there's a long way to go. And I want to say that as much as I can risk being, judged or not coming off as the perfect advocate, because you're not alone. And not only are you not alone, but it's not like I'm speaking to you from like I'm over here and like it's going great and maybe one day you can get there. Like, we are all on this path, and I'm just so proud of you for showing up and being in treatment anyway. And the fact that you're even here and you're challenging your OCD by being here and acknowledging it as OCD and not as, reality, and you're advocating for yourself and you're engaging with us, like that's everything. And you're doing amazing.
Uma, beast mode activated. I was actually going to go around because we're out of time, unfortunately, but I was going to go around and give final thoughts. Uma, if you don't mind, that was a great final thought. So thank you so much. Callista, starting 2023 off, thoughts, suggestions, insights.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my worst OCD episode was when I was 19, but that's not to say that I don't still deal with OCD like every day, right? But I still try my best to live a fulfilled life, and that's by putting my values forward. There's actually a really great values list. It's by Russ Harris on Purdue EDU. But that's the one I always refer back to. And that's the one my therapist gave me a really long time ago. And it has like a full list of values. And I really recommend going there and looking at that and just writing on paper, because having things on paper really helps, just helping you know what your values are and go from there. But yeah, it does get better. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it really does. I was like nonverbal at a point because of how bad my OCD was. And I never thought I would be able to speak about it, let alone on a live stream, let alone be an advocate. So it really does get better, no matter if you're getting treatment at 10 or 70.
Awesome.
Beautifully said, Callista. Absolutely.
Thank you, Callista. And I love that values list as well. It's awesome. And I'm glad that Amanda just put that in the chat for us too. I think final thoughts for me, going back to compassionate commitments. And I heard some folks ask earlier if they can use that. Please use that. Yeah, feel free. Totally fine. I'm all about that. But I think for me, going back to that, I want y'all to hear again, yes, we are on these streams and we talk and we advocate, but it doesn't mean it's easy all the time. And I'm alongside you, continuing to fight my OCD and run towards my values and do all of those things. And I think for me, moving into 2023, my biggest compassionate commitment is to continue to be nicer to myself, but also to I don't know, give myself the same grace that I give others around me. And I can talk about that all day long. I tell clients about self-compassion all day long, all of those things, but I really struggle with that still in my daily life, and just want to put that out there for anyone else who might be struggling navigating that. I tend to often feel like an imposter and tend to be really hard on myself pretty much after every live stream or interaction or anything else. And I want to put out there that my compassionate commitment is to continue to carry confidence in the person that I am and to give myself the same love I'd offer to those around me. And I hope that you can compassionately commit to that in your life as well, along with anything else you're committing to this year.
And before we wrap up, I'm just going to represent the other side of this process, which is I agree with everything everybody is saying, right? And I talk about in my community conversations, I'm open and honest about where I am and what I'm struggling with. But I think we can all agree also, it's fantastic on the other side as well. And I know we don't say that there's another side, but there is another side to treatment, right? There is this management maintenance side. And I just think it's also important to say, because I don't want people to walk away going, oh, wow, okay, I get better and I also struggle. Life is great. And like, I know it's not cured, but there's chronic, but if chronic is as good as it gets, it's pretty damn good. It really is. And it only gets better. And so, yes, we have our days and our weeks and our months, but we also have our days and our weeks and our months where, like, what's OCD? It doesn't interfere. It's very value-driven living. You know, I can experience joy and be present in the moment, things that never, ever, ever happen to me. So I just want to make sure to represent the glowing side of this process, right? Which is we totally suffer and struggle, just like anybody else with a disorder, right? Diabetes. I have friends with diabetes, friends with MS. They do everything right. And they have great, great days. And then one day my friend wakes up and she can't walk. Yeah. It's not that she did anything wrong. It's not that she messed up. It's just her disorder and disease. And she, you know, goes 2 or 3 days and then she can walk again, right? And our disorder and disease works the exact same way. So I just really want to hit home that absolutely we are with you on this journey. And it is not linear and it is not perfect. But, you know, with treatment, with support, with the IOCDF and other organizations that are advocates and patient first, you really can have a beautiful, remarkable life and make life, you know, and live a life where life is just really hard and not just the OCD. You know, you can let life torture you a bit. It's great. Turns out life is hard too.
Yeah, right. No, we did that talk at this past conference with Kim and Shala on, you know, OCD being chronic, that you can live a joyful life anyway. And I'm so glad you brought it back to that, because we have, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but ridiculous amounts of fun and laugh a lot. And I think all of that can fit together. And
so just wanted to
hear that.
Add that.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. Okay, so this live stream is one of many. You can see the entire schedule of future streams at iocdf.org/peace of mind. You can also view recordings of past live streams, as well as watch our hosts answer your pre-submitted questions, OCD Mailbag, on IOCDF's YouTube channel, youtube.com/IOCDF. Please remember to like and subscribe to get notified when live streams are scheduled. Also, some upcoming announcements. Camp registration is open, and you can register now for this awesome event created for youth with OCD and their families. I know I'll be there. We'll be playing all sorts of games. It'll be awesome. The program will include live sessions for parents and guardians and opportunities for fun socialization with other families. You can register at iocdf.org/camp. And tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, we have Ask the Experts with Dr. Liz and with Chris. And you won't want to miss that either. So you can get on there and ask all of your questions. Finally, thank you to the IOCDF. Thank you to Amanda behind the scenes. And a special thank you to Uma and Callista for being here and authentically sharing all of their experiences. And really just thank you to all of you for being in the comments, being in the chat, for being here with us on this journey, and for advocating together. We love y'all, and we hope you have an amazing start to 2023, and we're excited to be on the journey with you.